CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
You are listening to a podcast by a guy that shouldn't have a podcast. It's Tim Graham and Friends.
Who's in the NFL here? You? You? How about you, Tim? You, Tim.
It's Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. I am in an undisclosed location, undisclosed to you, the listener/viewer, because I know where I'm at. Jonah knows where I am, but I'm declining to divulge at this moment where I am. I'm not in South Florida yet, and I want to say at the top of this podcast, good luck to everybody for going down to, usually you fly into Fort Lauderdale, but even if you're going into Palm Beach or Miami Airport, with everything that's going on, I've been following it on the news all day, hundreds upon hundreds. In fact, I think it was up to over 850 flights canceled as of about 1 p.m. Today with air traffic control and TSA agents and the government shutdown. So I know that a lot of Bills fans make this their big travel weekend. Temperatures are supposed to be 85, maybe plus on Sunday. So it's a great weekend to get out of Western New York and go to South Florida. I just hope that everybody makes it. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I am kind of just flying by the seat of my pants here. So I may be covering the Bills game from my couch, or I may be in the press box. I don't know. Interesting week for the Bills here, Jonah. Playing the lowly Dolphins, traded one of their better players, Jalen Phillips, to Philadelphia, clearly in rebuild mode. They fired their general manager a couple of weeks ago. Tyreek Hill's out. Mike McDaniel still somehow has a job. Tua Tagovailoa is, he still is able to pull a decent performance out of his rear, but it has not been great. The Bills didn't do anything at the trade deadline, suffering from all kinds of injuries. I guess we'll just start here and see where the conversation goes. Jonah, what's your take on this week as we move through the trade deadline and head towards a Miami Dolphins game that should be a big win, or an easy win for Buffalo. And yet Buffalo is still in second place to New England. And New England, by the way, just to open up all possible avenues for this discussion, New England has the easiest schedule remaining of all 32 teams in the NFL. Win percentage of their remaining opponents is .358. And I think it's been a pretty strong sample size. We're halfway through the NFL season, a little bit more than halfway through the NFL season. 2 of their 8 games are against the Jets. Yes, New England has Tampa Bay, which is a tough game on Sunday, but so do the Bills. The Bills also have 2 tougher opponents that the Patriots don't have in Philly and Pittsburgh. So I don't know. The floor is yours, Jonah. Your take on where these Bills are as we start veering towards the home stretch.
Well, to what I think was your original question about this game this Sunday, I think that a lot depends on the Dolphins and how well they play and what stage they are in their regression. Because it seemed like for a while that in the last number of matchups that the Dolphins are incapable of beating the Bills home and away. There have not been many, but there have been some close ones. There was a game that the Bills lost when maybe the weather played a big factor, but it doesn't seem like this is a game that the Dolphins can win. I don't fear a letdown performance from the Bills, and I think that if there's any potential for the Bills to lose this game, it would be more of a heroic effort from the Dolphins to show pride, play for their coach, win at home, division opponent where they think they know some things, and maybe play what would maybe be the best game the Dolphins have played against the Bills with this coaching staff and this group of players
The
in a
Bills
number
do
of
have a
years.
lot of injuries. I guess to set that up, we know that Shaq Thompson, who I think heading into the season, we're probably thinking, oh, big deal, Shaq Thompson, depth linebacker. But he has been playing very well, particularly on rundowns for the Bills defense. AJ Epinesa coming off a great game against the Chiefs and laying that big hit, one of the biggest hits you'll ever see, that won't draw a penalty on Patrick Mahomes. AJ Epinesa out with the concussion. Defensive backs Christian Benford and Taron Johnson, both questionable with groin injuries sustained in practice. Taron Johnson late last week, Christian Benford on Wednesday. So we don't know if they're going to go. That does create, those variables do create some sort of maybe opening for the Dolphins. You don't think so?
Well, I also wonder if this is a game where the Bills rest some of these 50-50 questionable injured players and get them healthy and don't let a recent groin injury that Christian Benford sustained in practice just a few days ago linger, and maybe not playing in this game keeps him healthier for the rest of the season. But you're talking multiple players at the same position in the secondary where the Bills already have some injuries at safeties and down depth and bodies. So I don't know how many players the Bills can rest against a Miami team that passes the ball. And even without Tyreek Hill, has speed and wide receivers and things like that that the Bills need to defend against. But I still think the Bills are going to win this game. I do think this is another game where the evaluation of the Bills will be by how many points they win and how good they look and style points and things like that. And specific to the trade deadline, if we want to talk more about that, how well the wide receivers perform. If Josh Palmer comes back and becomes this, player that they thought he was going to be when they signed him, and now in season, he's almost coming in as the player that many hoped the Bills would have traded for. Different positions, safety and whatnot. If the Bills continue to struggle at positions where it seemed like they needed to make a trade for help, even if they win the game, there'll be cause for some concern coming out of that win. And regarding the division and the Patriots, I think that all comes down to the game in Foxborough in December. I think it's going to be very difficult for the Bills to win the division if they don't win that game, don't have the tiebreaker, and will incur another loss in that division race. And I think if the Bills win that game, they probably win the division. So I don't see too many scenarios where the Bills lose in New England and still win the division, or win in New England and don't win the division. I think it all comes down to that specific game.
Yeah, it looks like Landon Jackson is going to be playing this week out of need, with Michael Hoyt being hurt and Epinesa also out, the aforementioned AJ Epinesa.
Javon Solomon. I mean, a lot of guys that the Bills have drafted recently and maybe have seen glimpses of, but really haven't gotten a whole lot of production or even full games out of, will need to step up and be important players for the rest of the season. I mean, some of these guys.
Jordan Phillips, who, he gets cut and re-signed 100 times, and he just always seems to find himself of value to the Bills, maybe not to other teams in the NFL, but it just goes to show how shorthanded the Bills are, that he comes into the lineup and got a sack in Carolina. That's not something he does.
Fedarian Mathis, I think he's a player that even Bills fans who pride themselves on knowing almost all of the players might not have recognized was on the practice squad a couple of weeks ago. Now he's on the 53.
Or some members of the media.
Right. I mean, I remember earlier in the season looking at that roster they give us at practice and being like, who's that? And he's been on the practice squad and they've called him up, but now he's on the 53, and the way it's going, he might be starting and playing all the snaps, or a heavy amount of snaps sooner than later.
What are your thoughts? I mean, we are in that mode right now. I think fans are too, of trying to analyze where the Bills can get better, and we fall into that kind of I don't know if messaging is quite the right word, but this mode of the trade deadline, came and went. They didn't get anybody. So the guys they traded for, you mentioned it, like Joshua Palmer and Javon Solomon and all these people who are going to have to come in. These are the trade deadline guys. Gabriel Davis is another one. Bills fans were done with Gabriel Davis when he left for the Jaguars, and mocking him for how poorly he performed in Jacksonville before he got hurt. Now he hasn't played in a year and a half. And it's just interesting to see some of the conversation being, hey, Gabriel Davis might be ready to go pretty soon. But that's a pretty desperate move. I know that he's had the big game. I mean, 13 seconds was a long time ago. He had that historic record-breaking game with all those touchdowns in Arrowhead Stadium. But that's a long time ago. There's a reason this guy hasn't had trouble finding a place to play, and it was coming back from this injury. And I don't know. I'm just not a big believer in Gabriel Davis helping out that receiver room too much.
Right. And I don't think he brings the speed that they need and ability to separate and get open, especially coming off injuries. Now, he has been a deep receiver for the Bills and Josh Allen in the past. But I think it's far-fetched to think he's going to be that player for the Bills now. Maybe he can be a fourth or fifth receiver that helps in some ways, but he's not going to be the number one receiver, game-breaking receiver that some hoped the Bills might land at the trade deadline. I think I said it earlier, though. Joshua Palmer can still be that player. He is a faster receiver that gets open deep. He did that against the Falcons before getting hurt. That's why the Bills signed him. He's possibly better than Amari Cooper, or at least better than what the Bills got out of Amari Cooper last year. He's not better than Amari Cooper in overall career, but if the Bills had traded for Joshua Palmer this week, I think a lot of Bills fans would be excited that he was coming in and hopeful that he would give the Bills more than they got out of Amari Cooper. And Brandon Beane emphasized this the other day, and it's always the case when a team does trade for a wide receiver. It's hard to integrate wide receivers mid-season, even a really Hall of Fame caliber receiver. The Bills got James Lofton in 1989, and he really did nothing until 1990. And the Bills have traded for other receivers, Kelvin Benjamin, and struggled to incorporate them into the lineup. And you saw maybe some of that with Amari Cooper last year. Joshua Palmer's been hurt, but he's on the team. He learned the offense. He's played in games. He knows what to do. I think he's going to play this weekend. I know he's questionable, but if he doesn't play this weekend, he's coming back a week after that. And he could be the receiver that helps the passing game just enough. And oh, by the way, the Bills are still doing pretty well on offense, yardage-wise and points-wise. And I don't think they're in a crisis mode with the offense. They could just use a little more and be a little better.
Well, I think it really comes down to the injuries and the fear of another one or two. And we heard Brandon Beane knock on the table at his news conference on Wednesday about injuries. Hopefully we don't get any more. And then 2 hours later, Christian Benford popped up on the injury report with a groin injury. So yeah, I mean, Dalton Kincaid gets hurt. He's got a history of, at least last year, and I know that was only his second year in the NFL, but fading down the stretch. Is he doing enough? Does he put all the work that he possibly can into keeping himself in the best shape and staying healthy? And he's been hurt this year already. So, I mean, imagine this offense without James Cook or Dalton Kincaid. One of those guys just suffering an injury that keeps him off the field for a couple of weeks could be devastating. The Dolphins.
And you know,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we can make a long list of players the Bills are counting on that it's difficult to count on their health. Matt Milano, Joey Bosa. Jordan Poyer is maybe the most important player on this defense right now. He has gotten the entire secondary has played better since he's came into the lineup at safety. Cole Bishop specifically, a lot of things that they used to do at safety, they seemed incapable of doing without Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And now having Jordan Poyer, at least for a game and a half, back there with Cole Bishop, have looked a little bit like the Bills of old. Now, credit to Jordan Poyer for being able to do that, but 2 years ago it looked like Jordan Poyer was too old and too injured and unable to make it to the end of the season. A year ago it seemed like he hung around 1 year too long to play that season in Miami. Now he's really been a boost to the Bills defense, but if the Bills need him to stay healthy for the next 2 months and 3 months and several games and several snaps as the starter, that seems difficult to forecast.
And every game's a big game when you're out of first place, when you're a half game behind the New England Patriots. And again, I just want to reiterate, the Patriots' remaining schedule has a combined win percentage of 358. The Bills 467, still at near the bottom. The Bills are in the lower third in terms of easiest schedules, or I should say the better third, the easiest third at 467. But being a half game behind the Patriots, having lost to the Patriots, that game December 14th in Foxborough is going to be huge. heading into the season, I didn't even book the travel for that game because I'm thinking, well, it's late in the season. If the Bills are blowing out everybody and they're ahead in the division by a nice margin, that's a game I won't go cover. Now it looks like it's the marquee game heading through the holidays.
But at the same time, the Bills are number one in several power rankings and probably two, three, or four in just about everything else. They just beat the Chiefs. I mean, they're not going to win every game, but as far as opponent win percentage and who's got a tough game, and the Bills should be favored to win just about every game they play now. And if they perform as well as they have in past seasons, are capable of going on a 9-10 game win streak to end the season. They've done it before.
I think so too. They need to hold up injury wise, and not have to call AJ Klein to come and finish out the season, or get Micah Hyde to stop drinking his weed beers, so that way he can pass a drug test and come back and maybe play safety for the Bills. I'm saying that facetiously, but he does have a weed beer that he's I don't know if he owns it or he's an investor in it or something like that, but
I say bring him back and continue to let him drink the weed beers. It might not, especially if he plays a role similar to he did last year. I think he can drink weird beers on the sidelines.
Bring him
and do
back as
what
a
he did
coach.
last
He doesn't have to pass a drug test if he's a coach, as far as I know. I don't think the NFL does that. The other reason I don't think the Bills are going to have a letdown is because they've had their wake-up call. And we've talked about it on the podcast before regarding that 2-game losing streak that they have. Is 2 games a streak? They lose. I'll rephrase. They lose
consecutive losses.
back-to-back
Yeah,
games every year. They never lose a 3rd game in a row, and they never do it again. They do it once every year since they started winning AFC East championships. They've had their 2-game losing span. They've lost 2 in a row. And heading into the bye, which had to make it tougher from a psychological standpoint. I'm just talking about sports psychology. They went a full calendar month without experiencing victory. And I think that now coming out of it, 40-9 over Carolina, followed up by a big win over Kansas City, that's momentum. That's some traction. And now they're chasing. And I think that that's a good place for the Bills to be mentally, chasing somebody. You're not going to get loose. You're not going to get sloppy. You're going to stay sharp. And I think that Josh Allen and Sean McDermott and certain guys in the organization make sure that once they've straightened it out, they stay going in the right direction. So I wouldn't see them losing a game in which they're favored by 9.5 points, which is what the spread is right now. Even though it is on the road and it is going to be in the heat, it's going to be approaching 90 degrees. I think game time temperature might be 87. But it's later in the year. You don't have the high sun like you did that one year when heat and dehydration and cramping was a big issue and guys dropping like flies. So the Bills won't be in the sun for the whole game. And, I think it'll be fine.
Also daylight savings.
Yes. It'll get darker earlier, although you're a lot closer to the equator down there, Jonah. Hey, big news out of the Sabres today. Rasmus Dahlin is taking a leave of absence from the team to be with his fiancée, who had a heart transplant. And we don't really know if it's complications or what. The Sabres aren't really saying there, other than she's okay, but they have his full support to go back to Sweden to be with his fiancée. From a hockey standpoint, I mean, the Sabres coming off a really ugly looking loss to the St. Louis Blues. It was 3-0. There was an empty net goal late. And not being able to scratch out 2 points in games, but they are getting 1 point. I think that in some ways, Lindy Ruff is taking where this team is right now, or I think would, with all the injuries that they're dealing with also. And now about to lose Rasmus Dahlin for an indefinite amount of time. You've been out there, Jonah, and you've been following these games. You've been covering them. What's your stance on the Sabres' state of as they about to go on a 4-game road trip to Carolina, Salt Lake City, Denver, and Detroit?
It's hard to be too excited about the way the Sabres are playing because they haven't been winning. Even though they earned a point in 7 straight games, they only won one of those games or two of those games. Like they lost a lot more than they won. They are battling injuries on the forward lines, illness. Jason Zucker, Yuri Cooley, they missed this week of games. They're probably coming back, but Zach Benson's hurt. Josh Norris is hurt. Maybe they're skating and they're closer to coming back, but they've been battling those injuries with the forwards. And now Rasmus Dahlin, he's their captain. He's their best player. He hasn't necessarily played like their best player. He's got the lowest plus minus on the team, but he still seems to be their most important player on the power play, playing the most minutes. And the Sabres have really struggled without him in the past. Last year's 13-game winless streak coincided with some injuries. So it does seem a little bit bleak going into this 4-game road trip with the way the Sabres have been playing, the injuries they have, and now going on the road without their captain. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not rock bottom, as I think some people like to pontificate about whether the Sabres have hit rock bottom or if this is rock bottom or if it's not rock bottom. It's been worse, and they're not.
It's been way worse. They're picking up
Right, it's been way
points.
worse. Right,
I mean,
yeah.
I watch them play, and they look much better than they did last season and the season before. So there's no way that this is rock bottom. But I do see people talking about that because of one loss. The loss last night was ugly.
Yeah, it was right. Although they had
how
more shots and outplayed the Blues in some ways, but the Blues were on the second night of a back-to-back, benched their second leading scorer, played the backup goalie, and didn't have very many shots and still won going away. Like they got the lead and the Sabres really never threatened to tie the game and get it back. Yeah, that was a bad loss and a bad performance for the home fan. But they have a 500 record and they're not out of it and they're playing well in some ways. It's just the things to be excited about are third and fourth liners and prospects playing decently, but they're going to get sent down to the minors next week. It's not any of the star players or any of the top players or anything to really get jazzed about going forward.
And there's no blaming Rasmus Dahlin for leaving the team for this circumstance. It's unfortunate timing, but you got to go, and he's got to be excused, and all the best to him, obviously.
He should take as much time as he needs, and there's probably some Sabres fans very hopeful that this is a short leave of absence, but it might be better, and if it's necessary, be better for Rasmus Dahlin and the Sabres and everybody involved if it's a somewhat longer or moderate leave of absence, and perhaps he should have been on a leave of absence from the start of the season and maybe thinking about when he's going to rejoin the team now instead of having to go through this the last couple of weeks and now taking a leave of absence.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Some of the good things that do come from the first long road trip of a hockey season, it's in hockey lore, right? It's canon to talk about the first long road trip and how everybody gets closer together and getting the boys on the road and camaraderie. And but to not have your captain there with you and then different guys who are hurt, whether they're staying back home or even traveling with the team and skating after practice and you're not really together as a unit. So I don't think that the Sabres are going to get nearly as much out of this road trip as hockey teams generally look forward to or hope that they do get when they make these long trips. So just to give a quick rundown, it's Hurricanes on Saturday, then the Mammoth on Wednesday, back-to-back Mammoth and Colorado Avalanche Wednesday, Thursday, and then the Red Wings next Saturday. So they're gone for, 9 days, 4 games in 9 days. No, I guess it's 4 games in 7 days. Yeah, 4 games in 7 days. Saturday to Saturday, 4 games in 8 days. All right, how about that? Saturday to Saturday is actually 8 days because you have to include a Saturday, right? Saturday and then a 7.
Close enough.
Right. But
it's funny, the Sabres PR, I don't mean to pick on them. They had this. They had this with a 7-day stretch and an 8-day stretch, and they put it out, and then they deleted the tweet, and then they put it back out, and kind of couldn't seem to decide whether these 3 goals that were scored in 1992 happened in 7 days or 8 days. And I just thought that was totally unnecessary, and you could have just said a week, and nobody else would have noticed.
Yeah, I think so. They come back, and then it's 4 straight at home. So, what's the temperature on Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen as the number 1 goaltender for the Sabres, Jonah?
Well, No, it's not good with the overall numbers last night. Now, last night was pretty much one save that he really needed to make that he didn't make. Another goal that went in on a breakaway shot that I don't think was his fault, and an empty net goal. So he didn't play terribly, but he wasn't good in the game they lost in Toronto. He did play well again in the game they won. But overall, it hasn't been good. They don't seem to trust him much to play like a number one goalie. He's the backup goalie right now and hit and miss. And you wonder where his confidence is, just with some of the statistics that he had last night. Uh, but the Sabres are getting really good goaltending out of Alex Lyon. So, and Colton Ellis played well when he did get in there,
They
and
have
maybe
their
he gets
9
healthy again.
goalies under NHL contracts, so they have maybe they can just do a go fish and just grab a name out of a hat and throw them in there.
Yeah, so in the short term, I don't think there's a goaltending crisis for the Sabres, but maybe a crisis in confidence for Ukko-Pekka and who he is and where he's going. Ukko-Pekka had that great season 2 years ago and earned his contract extension and became the Sabres' number one goalie and goaltender of the present with that one season. But he came into that season as a number three goalie that they weren't sure about. And last year, he ended the season pretty much as the number two goalie behind James Reimer. Now he's again the number two goalie behind Alex Lyon. He's had more time in his NHL career where he's been a backup that the Sabres weren't sure about than he's had in that one season where he claimed the top goaltending spot.
Yeah. Um, we talked last week, Jonah, about UB football being irrelevant. They're relevant again.
Yeah, that was an erroneous statement by whoever said that. No, I was thinking about that while watching the game. I think it might have had something reflected in my mood, but that is how I view UB football and college sports in Western New York is always through that prism of relevance because I feel like there's times when I'd like to be out there covering all of the college events like I used to, and like I feel like some people should, but I split my time between Bills, Sabres, and Bandits and Bisons and high school and colleges. And so you need to kind of be on that pulse of whether UB football or UB basketball or St. Bonaventure basketball are relevant enough for more coverage and more attention. And I think when UB lost and some of the unimpressive wins that they had and got to 4-4, lost to Akron, which is a game that I thought they needed to win to have a good season. I was ready to give up on them, but I was wrong. I mean, they played very well in this win at Bowling Green. Now they're tied for first place in the MAC, and it slipped my mind a week ago that they had a linebacker who was tied with Khalil Mack for the all-time record in forced fumbles, and
How
then
amazing is that? That it's 2 UB guys.
it's two UB guys. It's two guys named Khalil. And, there was a student reporter that asked Pete Lembo today about UB being the new linebacker U with Khalil Mack and Sean Dolek and Red Murdoch now. And that probably left out a number of names. They've had some good pass rushers and edge rushers and Joe Andreessen. And Khalil Hodge is a player who played there a few years ago, had a great career at UB. And I think he's their all-time leading tackler. James Patterson, Jared Patterson's brother, is the all-time leading tackler. Now that I think about it, they've had all MAC linebackers year after year after year, and a few of these guys have made it to the
Khalil Mack's
NFL.
brother played in the NFL, Jonah,
Yeah,
although I think
Ladarius
that was a
Mack, yeah.
favor to Khalil Mack.
Malcolm Kuntz. They've had NFL pass rushers slash linebackers, a number of them over the years. And Khalil Mack's the best one. I don't really know if he's the first one. I think it might be a stretch because of the different coaches they've had, the different style of players. Not all these guys played with each other. It's not like one linebacker is grooming the next linebacker so much, although I think we're seeing that with this latest crop from Joe Andreessen to Sean Dolak and Red Murdoch. They all played together. But, there's a long run of success for good linebackers coming out of UB. All MAC players, all American players, NFL players, and now NCAA record holders for forced fumbles. Two UB players at the top of that list. And I think that's something for Western New York football fans to celebrate and pay some attention to as well.
This is from Pro Football Reference, and sometimes it's not precise, especially when it comes to defensive positions, because linebacker versus defensive end, sometimes it can get a little wacky based on whether you're in a 4-3 or a 3-4. But there's Ramon Guzman from 2007 who played with the Indianapolis Colts for 16 games on special teams, but that's another linebacker who made it to the NFL. I don't remember Ramon Guzman.
I remember Ramon Guzman. I mean, that's the first year I was on the beat, and I remember him being their best linebacker. They weren't good that year. It was Turner Gill's first season. I think they went 2-10, but he was their best defensive player and did get drafted. Justin Winters was the starting middle linebacker on the team that won the 2008 championship, and he was a good player at UB. I don't think he went to the NFL, but they've had good linebackers more often than not in the years I've covered them.
Some basketball news out of UB, and of course the season's beginning. But the UB women are going to host Kentucky, a ranked team, Saturday, or no, that's Sunday. Is it during the Bills game, right?
2 o'clock tip.
But tell us about this
right
matchup. You got a ranked team with prestige coming to town with a local who plays a lot of minutes for them.
Yeah, their best player. Clara Strack, forward from Hamburg. She started her career at Virginia Tech, but transferred into Kentucky last year. And she's been, she was an all SEC player. She's on national watch lists for early season watch lists for player of the year lists, things like that. And yeah, they're number 24 in the country. It's a really good game for women's basketball fans. It's good for UB to be able to get this game at home. It's their home opener. They're going to raise the banner from that women's NIT championship that they won last year. And they've played a game already.
It's a legit banner, right? The NIT, I don't think, is a legit tournament.
It's a lip banner.
Anymore, but the championship, that's legit, right?
Yeah, you win a tournament, you raise a banner.
National tournament.
It's, we talked about it when it was happening. The women's NIT is different than the men's NIT in just the pecking order of tournaments. It's the third tournament, and the NIT is the second tournament for the men. So this is kind of like winning the CBI. But if a men's team won the CBI, they'd probably raise that banner. So yes, you do raise that banner, especially if you've never done it before. They did it at home. That was, if you're doing this for the fans, I think that's something to celebrate and something to appreciate. Now, it's an entirely new coaching staff, and they only have one player back from that team. But hopefully they get some of those former players and maybe even a coach or two back in town to help raise that banner and pass the torch to this team. And if they go and upset number 24 Kentucky on their home floor after that, that'll be pretty cool to watch. I'm curious.
Is there a point spread?
There probably is. I haven't looked it up. There's going to be an autograph signing session with Strack and probably some other Kentucky players after the game. And so it's going to be a really good event for women's basketball fans and young girls that go to the women's basketball game. I wonder what the Bills game being at the same time does to the crowd and the potential to have a big crowd. Selling out the gym for the WNIT, I think, was quite an accomplishment. I almost feel like they're raising a banner for that as much as they are.
Will Jackie Walker be there?
Tournament. I'm sure Jackie Walker will be there in the front row. And hopefully they're not going to sell out the place, but hopefully they have a sizable crowd. I think they had about 3,000 when Stanford played here a few years ago with Tara Vanderveer as the coach. And I believe in a Saturday or Sunday when the Bills game wasn't going on at the same time, they could get a 3,000 to 4,000 person crowd at this game. But I do wonder what that's going to be like tipping off during the Bills game. Let me ask you this, because sometimes I hope people like when we have these kind of discussions. How do you feel about, we're kicking off the basketball season. We're dropping the puck on the football season. When sometimes you hear these mixed metaphors.
Yes.
Dropping the puck, maybe we don't. But kicking off, I hear a lot. The kickoff show for a sport where there's no kicking off. It bugs me a little bit.
Or teeing off is another one. Yeah, kickoff. Yeah, absolutely. You have to do the thing that, opening bell, teeing off, tip off, face off, first pitch. Yeah, you got to line it up.
Yeah, you got to match your metaphors, right?
I'm trying to find it, Jonah. It looks like they only just want to give us today. I should be able to go somewhere.
People are going to think I only asked that question to stall because you're looking something up, but no, that was a legitimate question.
I agree. It's a thing.
While you're doing that, let me mention UB men's basketball plays home Friday night. Maybe this game will have already kicked off by the time you listen to this podcast, but Green Bay, the opponent, has an interesting coach by the name of Doug Gottlieb, who played here in the NCAA tournament back in 2000 and played well.
You know what I think is crazy about Doug Gottlieb is that he was a point guard at Notre Dame and Oklahoma State, point guard, right? Highly recruited
Yep.
player. Started 107 games in his career. I looked it up. His point guard, especially a point guard, his career free throw percentage is .457. How is that possible?
Yeah, free throw shooter. I mean, some guys are good ball handlers, good players, good point guards, and not good shooters. Now that can limit you in your career. And these days in the NBA, it's very, very hard to be a non-shooting point guard. But 20, 30 years ago, I think there were more and more of those. You know what I think's crazy about Doug Gottlieb is that he's coaching his Division I basketball team in Buffalo tonight after doing his radio show, syndicated radio show from the UB Stadium football press box earlier today. You know, they
It
did
isn't,
morning
yeah.
shoot around, and then he goes and talks about the Cowboys and the Lakers and Luca, and then back to coaching this game against UB.
The whole setup is ridiculous. Wisconsin Green Bay hired him last season and let him keep doing his radio show. It was part of his contract. And Green Bay is viewing this as like free advertising. Probably it's baked into it for NIL money or whatever. You get to go and play for this nationally known basketball guy, and it hasn't worked. What they won 2 games last year.
Yeah, I think that's right.
They are only 3.5-point underdogs at Alumni Arena tonight. So if you want to bet on the distraction that is Doug Gottlieb, let's hope. And if his players shoot free throws anything like he does, you might want to lay the 3.5.
I mean, I might go check it out more to watch Buffalo. They won the other night against Southern Mississippi and made some shots, and I want to see if they're any better. I've seen them against Syracuse. Tomorrow I'm going to see Bonner and Canisius. Bonner looks pretty good.
Is
Think
that
they're
at
gonna have a
Bonner
good
or
year.
at Canisius?
At Bonner, down in Allegheny/Olean.
Well, I hope you don't run into any snow.
I'm not expecting to, although that's coming in the coming days. Be
All right, Jonah.
forewarned.
Well, thanks for this. Hey, everybody out there, subscribe, like, comment, rate, do whatever you do on your platform of choice. Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, keeps growing. And the more we grow, the more we can do. The more the algorithm unlocks some different shizzle for me to use'll. Jonah, any closing thoughts?
I think we touched on most of it. I don't know. We didn't talk a whole lot about the trade deadline. I don't know if you wanted to get back on that or if you had a strong opinion. I don't
know. I
have a
mean,
strong opinion.
we're recording this on Friday, 4 days later. Brandon Beane spoke 2 days ago. I mean, I think it's Brandon Beane showed in his disappointment that he was wrong about his wide receivers. He was looking for help. Now, of course, he said a lot of it had to do with injuries and how things shake out, that you set up the 53-man roster to not have to rely on the trade deadline. But as things evolve in the season, he realized that he needed help there. And so that was interesting to me, but it also seems like we've about hammered out as much as we can on the trade deadline. Did you have what was your
I thought
visceral reaction to it?
the outrage over the Bills not making a trade was overdone. This is the NFL. It has gotten to be more common, and the Bills made a trade on each of the last 3 deadline days, but it isn't like hockey and basketball and baseball where all of the contenders load up and make a lot of trades. And, NFL teams have won the Super Bowl without adding at the trade deadline year after year after year. It's not
I think it does hurt Brandon Beane from a fan reaction standpoint that this is a hockey town, that this is a NFL/NHL town, and there are only a couple of them. Vegas for now, and Nashville and Buffalo are the 3. And for the fans to kind of be wired for the trade deadline that they're used to on the hockey side, and now that football has warmed up to making these types of deals over the last 5 years or so. Prior to that, like you said, you just didn't make trades in the NFL like this. So yeah, I think it does hurt Brandon Beane that the hockey fan there's a lot of overlap between the fan base. It just expects, hey, are you going to go for it or are you not going to go for it? And not going for it shows that you're a timid general manager, whether you're Jason Bottrell or Kevin Adams or Darcy Regier, but now the NFL general manager is kind of lumped in that stew also.
I would agree. And it made me kind of realize I thought Brandon Beane seemed more disappointed in not being able to make a trade than I thought he would be or that I thought he needed to be. But I think he wanted to go out there on Wednesday and have something for the fans and show that he matched their energy and matched their desperation is the wrong word, but need to do something and everything possible to try to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. And that's what the fans wanted. And I think he wanted to give that to them. But it reminded me of like, how many times this happened to you in your fantasy leagues where you really want to make a trade and you identify the trade that you think makes sense for your team and the other team and should be done, but the other person just doesn't do it. And you can't force trades upon people. And Brandon Beane was not able to force general managers to make trades with them. I think he tried to make these trades, and there were salary cap considerations that probably prevented them from making all of the trades that roster-wise they might have wanted to make. But he seemed disappointed that the stars didn't align and the other GMs in the NFL didn't cooperate with his desire to give the Bills, a wide receiver for Christmas as an early Christmas present.
Yeah, and that two of the hottest sellers were also within the division, bad break, and that helps out one contender. I mean, the Bills do have to worry about the Indianapolis Colts in terms of the pecking order of seeding and playoff, especially if the Bills don't win their division and are a wild card. And, the Colts got a lot better on defense with Sauce Gardner, one of the premier cornerbacks in the NFL. And then there are a couple of receivers that got away to other teams, the receivers that would have helped the Bills, Rashee Rice and who am I forgetting?
I mean, I don't know. Did Jacoby Myers get traded?
Jacoby Myers. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
yes.
it. Yeah, Jacoby Myers. Yeah, I knew that there was a second receiver. All right, Jonah, thanks for this. Thanks to everybody. And again, good luck if you're traveling to South Florida. And we appreciate your patronage of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.